everybody, welcome back. Dr. Knuckle here for another sleep tip. Okay, so I know it seems like I'm always raining on the parade with your food and drink, and I'm gonna continue. Don't worry, it's not always about food and drink, but we're on a roll here, so let's keep going. So today I'm going to mention alcohol. And now, a lot of times people think that alcohol is actually your friend for sleeping. A lot of people actually tell me that they use it as a sleep aid. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to alcohol when it comes to sleep. The advantage is, there's two things. It's got a weird dichotomy. It's got a depressant effect and a stimulant effect. And they hit at different points during the night. They exercise their chemicals at a different point. So initially, if you drink alcohol, it does help you fall asleep. That's true. It has that depressing effect, begins early in the sleep. And so it does actually shorten the amount of time it takes you to fall asleep. So the sleep stages, N1 is your lightest stage of sleep, which is the first stage you usually hit, and it's the easiest to wake up from, which moves on to N2, N3, your slow wave sleep, which is your deepest sleep. And then there's REM sleep, which is your dream state. So initially in the first 3 hours of the night, it reduces your N1 sleep, your light sleep, and you go straight faster to the deep sleep, and you have more deep sleep in the first 3 hours of sleep after alcohol. And you have less REM sleep and less light sleep. But after about 3 hours, the tide starts to change. And now you have significantly more N1 sleep, light sleep, and significantly less slow wave sleep. And since you're easier to wake up from N1 stage sleep compared to slow wave sleep, you end up waking up way more often. And you may think that this is okay. These, sleep structure changes equal themselves out, that you front load your slow wave sleep and you end up making up for light sleep or dream sleep later on. But unfortunately, it doesn't actually end up like that. You end up with a shorter amount of sleep time, less slow wave sleep, less REM sleep, and a far more fragmented night. It is notorious for causing awakenings overnight, especially after the first 3 hours as your night moves on. So in the long run, it doesn't actually pay off, and you end up with worse sleep with alcohol than you do if you hadn't had any alcohol. Now, some people use alcohol as a sleep aid and it ends up becoming like a chronic dependency. Well, the problem is you need more alcohol to get the same, you develop a tolerance in order to get the same early sedating effects that you can get from alcohol. It takes more to reach those thresholds that you used to feel. And then if you have chronic use, the sleep structure changes that I mentioned persist even after stopping alcohol. So it ends up becoming a vicious cycle where you start drinking alcohol to help your sleep. It affects your sleep. So then you decide to stop drinking alcohol. And then because the changes persist even after stopping, people end up caving and going back to alcohol. And it ends up being this vicious cycle that people have a hard time getting out of. So, it's best if you happen to be someone who does drink alcohol as a sleep aid, or just maybe you drink alcohol just because you want to, and it has nothing to do with whether or not it impacts your sleep, but you are someone who has trouble sleeping, then really the recommendation is similar to dark chocolate, is to try a stretch of time without alcohol and see how it impacts your sleep. Now, this is going to be a little trickier, especially if you've been a long-term user of alcohol. Then you're going to have a harder time and the trial will probably fail. But if you're a relatively light use alcohol drinker and maybe it's hit or miss, you're not like an every night drinker, then the trial is worth giving it a shot and seeing if it affects your sleep. I can almost guarantee that it will, because alcohol really does take a big hit to your sleep. It's just going to matter on how big of a drinker you are, how much you consume, and how long you've been doing it. So we'll have to come up with other tactics if you're in the heavier user, longer term user category than if you're, I drink 3 times a week, I have a glass of wine. And it also sort of depends on proximity to sleep. So, if you're drinking several hours prior to sleep, then you should be okay. Although if you're having trouble sleeping, it's still worth testing out, like drop the glass of wine and see what happens. But if you're doing it, within 2 hours of bedtime, then you're running into risks with that. So that's the recommendation. Also, I will mention that the alcohol has a dose response relationship with your sleep. So the more you drink, the more it impacts your sleep, and the more you feel the effects of altered sleep structure, the more you're missing out on deep sleep, which we need. That's our recovery phase. Less dream, and you're getting way more fragmented sleep. You just end up with less quality sleep altogether, more awakenings. So it's proportional. If you drink more, it affects your sleep more. If you drink less, it affects your sleep less. So that's the final note on that one. But be aware of alcohol. It's a little deceptive because it does help you fall asleep, but it doesn't stay like that. Okay, that's the tip for today, and I'll see you next time.